Good evening. So this is part two of the earlier lecture that arch models, lecture two, part two, because I couldn't complete lecture two in one go, because by the time it is 30 minutes, the lot of disturbances start appearing. So in this lecture, what we are trying to do is we basically look at the estimation and some of the important properties of the arch. So before getting to that arch, let me recollect some of these things. So what you have is basically, this is the model, yt equal to say mu t plus epsilon t, and mu t is expected value of yt given ft minus 1, where ft is sigma field generated by yt minus 1, yt minus 2, etc. And we have, so this is what the mean, conditional mean, and we have the conditional variance, yt minus mu t given ft minus 1 square. So this is what basically the sigma t square. Now you can see that expected value of epsilon t square is, we sort of assume that this is IID. So this is expected value of epsilon t is, what is expected value of epsilon t is expected value of, I'm going to assume that this epsilon t is now modeled with sigma t zt, where zt is IID 0, 1, and I'll assume sigma t square is alpha naught plus summation j equal to 1 to n alpha j epsilon t minus j square. So this is what our arch M. Okay. So now from this equation itself, you can see that the volatility clustering, that previous days of high variation is adding to the current day of the variation, the variation of the current day. So there is a clustering of that. But one leverage effect that you can see, that whether the variation due to minus or bull market or bear market is will have the same effect. In fact, that is one of the drawbacks of the arch model. So you have the same thing here, and this is IID. I mean, we have assumed that this is this. In fact, we have computed. So we have computed and seen that expected value of epsilon t is expected value of sigma t z t given ft minus 1, and then once again, if you take epsilon t expectation. So this is sigma t and expected value of zt given ft minus 1, and this is 0. Therefore, this whole thing is 0. So the marginal expectation is 0. Similarly, you can also obtain the marginal variance. Epsilon t square is expected value of sigma t square zt square, and which can be obtained as expectation of zt square. Sorry, this can be written as expectation of this comes out sigma t square and zt square, and given ft minus 1, and what you have is now this is 1. Therefore, this is this. And what is this quantity? This quantity is like sigma t square is alpha naught plus alpha 1 epsilon t minus 1 square in the case of an arch M. So that we have seen that in the last class, this is actually coming down to alpha naught upon, let us derive that actually. If you have a difficulty, it's not difficult to derive. So the expected value of, sorry, This is alpha naught plus alpha 1. This. And we have already seen that expected value of this is expectation of sigma t square. So you get this as alpha naught plus alpha 1 expectation of sigma t minus 1 square. And assuming you have a kind of stationarity, so we can say that expectation of sigma t square is alpha naught upon 1 minus alpha 1, which is same as the marginal variance. So you see, this is actually free from t. This is also free from t, which implies this epsilon t process is kind of stationary because the mean is free from time and the variance is free from time. And but however, the conditional variance changes as time changes. That is sigma t square, which is the conditional variance. So you see, it is the variation. Now you may say that why not bring the change in the marginal variance? Well, if you bring in terms of marginal variance, this will become a non-stationary model. So we don't want that because we don't know how to analyze a non-stationary model. So we want that to be stationary. So marginal should not be affected. At the same time, the conditional should change. So that is why and the kind of form that we are going to give is this. So I have a multiplicative model. So this is what called a multiplicative structure. Now multiplicative because anything that changes the variance has to be a multiplicative structure, because if you are adding, it won't change the variance. Any constant, this won't change the variance. So this now changes the variance of this, where zt is id01. So when you multiply, you can see that it becomes sigma t square. Therefore, the variation of this is sigma t square. But then we are going to now say that okay, sigma t square is a function of this alpha j epsilon t minus j square. So this is what the past error squares. So this is basically the current volatility. So this is where the clustering comes. Current volatility is depending on the past error squares. So this is what the volatility clustering. Now you may ask the question here, why should be specified in this manner? You can have another specification. Well, you can have another specification. I went for squares because we want this to be positive. So naturally we get some condition that alpha naught is strictly greater than 0 and alpha j is greater than or equal to 0 for all j equal to 1, 2, etc. m. So this condition that you have, of course, this condition is further stringent if you talk about the moments of this. That we have seen that we have actually derived the fourth moment of epsilon t's just to see the kurtosis under normality. So under zt is normal, we have actually derived the kurtosis of this. That's not difficult because you can directly to the fourth moment, and standard normal, the fourth moment is 3 sigma raised to 4. No? So you can actually write it as 3 sigma is 1, in this case. So it is possible. So what we have done is we have actually gone through this whole of this in the last lecture, and this basically tells me that this is having kurtosis large values greater than 3. So that means it is you have kurtosis more than the normal distribution, which has 3. So that's what it has tails with that fat tails even with the normal innovations. So now let's look at some of these properties. What are the properties? So properties of arch model continued. So one is the fitting. You can actually fit them using maximum likelihood. Now there is a problem. Least square method cannot be used. With an appropriate modification, it is possible to bring the least square Because if you convert that into an additive kind of setup, it is possible to apply the least square here. So I'll show you that how that can be done. Uh, Now volatility forecasting of conditional variance recursively using volatility equation. Because as I told you that in the usual model, you have, see for example, if I have a time series model, I have what we have learned so far, some parameter, and this is the past values and some ZT. This is the white noise. And we are trying to identify what is this, of course, with a linear structure. And then using this linear structure, we would like to forecast this, having observed the values y1, y2, yt. So this is my observation. So I would like to forecast this. So this is basically you are trying to forecast expected value of yt plus k given y1, y2, yt. This is the conditional best forecast. And with a normality, you say that this is a linear function of this, and that's what we do. In this case, my interest is to forecast not this. My interest is to forecast this rather than this quantity. So we are interested in forecasting this. So that is called volatility forecasting. So I would like to know what is going to be this at a k time point. Now this is, see, there is a difference, a little difference here is, this is forecasted, or we are trying to attempt forecast having the same value known up to time t. For this fellow, I don't know anything because these are not observable. So in this equation, even if I write like this equation, what is observable? Observable is this. This is totally unobservable. This one is observable because this is same as that, the past values only. So whereas this equation is not like a regression equation, the reason being that I don't have an error here. So this is a deterministic equation. So these models are generally called deterministic model. But this is a stochastic equation, like regression, but then it is not additive, it is multiplicative. The reason being that now I am trying to model not the mean, I am trying to model the variance. So regression you are trying to model the mean, conditional mean. Whereas here you are trying to model the variance. So this is the main difference that what we have. So let's look at these aspects. So, while arch model resembles regression model, the fact that the conditional variance is not directly observable, it introduces some subtlety in the use of arch models in the data analysis. It can be shown that the condition is 0 less than or equal to alpha less than 1, alpha 1 less than 1 is necessary and sufficient for weak stationarity. Stationarity we will discuss a little later after this. So it is interesting that observe that the weak stationarity does not preclude the possibility of non-constant conditional variance process, as in the case of Arch1 model. The weak stationarity does not preclude the possibility of non-constant. You can have non-constant conditional variance process. So let's look at the estimation of these models. So let's look at the estimation. Now under the estimation, I am considering the likelihood method, the maximum likelihood. So what I do is that I need to, these are my observations. So I need to write down the joint density of this. So because you have that kind of an AR structure, the joint density can be written as assuming the normality 1 by square root of 2 pi sigma t square e to the power of minus epsilon t square by 2 sigma t square, because we have seen that this epsilon t fellow has mean 0 and so this has variance sigma t square. So this can be written like this multiplied by f of epsilon 1 epsilon 2 epsilon m. This is something, I mean, this is similar to the AR likelihood, ARM likelihood. So the problem is that the exact form of this is very complicated and therefore often dropped, and we consider only this in the conditional setup, especially when t is large. T is the total number of observations, so we only consider the conditional one. Now, this normality assumption is also not very good. Actually, sometimes we want to have heavy tail distributions. So we may assume a T distribution or generalized error distributions, GED, These are some of the distributions that are generally used. One can use much more heavy tail distribution in this context as well. Now, as I was telling you that the least square theory is not directly available, but after some manipulation, it is possible that you can apply least square theory. So you may not be able to apply it here on this directly because it is a multiplicative model, and expectation of the zero and the variance is changing. So I cannot directly apply the least square theory here. But what we'll do is that we rewrite this equation. I'm going to define an eta t as epsilon t square minus sigma t square. Epsilon t square is there, sigma t square is there. So basically I'm going to write epsilon t square minus sigma t square as eta t, and then so of course you can see that this will be sigma t square here because epsilon t is sigma t z t. So epsilon t square means sigma t square z t square. So sigma t square if you take out, then z t square minus 1. So you can get this kind of thing. Now the sequence, this particular sequence, we call this as a martingale difference sequence. You don't have to get afraid of the name because what you can see is that these are uncorrelated. It's like, when epsilon, this is a finite quantity and then correspond to this sigma field, this eta t minus j, that will have covariance 0 or correlation 0. That's what martingale difference sequence is all about. It doesn't matter. What we are trying to do is that I am going to try to write this equation in a stochastic manner, and the error that I am getting is slightly different from the IID usual error. So that's, and there we call them as martingale difference sequence. So how do I do that exercise? That's pretty simple. You subtract sigma t square here, so you subtract sigma t square, so here is 0, and then you add epsilon t square here, so you have to add epsilon t square here. So this is epsilon t square on the left hand side, and all these quantities are there, and here epsilon t square minus sigma t square, and that is eta t. So now I have the equation like this: epsilon t square equal to alpha naught plus alpha 1 epsilon t minus 1 square, etc. Plus eta t. And this eta t is like the IID case. It is not IID, it is a martingale sequence, but we can still apply the least square theory to estimate these parameters alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha m. And that's what the least square method of estimation in the context of Archer model. So what you are doing is you are not directly writing in the maximum likelihood. We wrote the likelihood corresponding to epsilon 1, epsilon 2, epsilon t, whereas here you are trying to write the squares and then find an equation connecting them and then try to estimate alpha 1, alpha m using the least square theory. So this is my least square equation, and you can see that this is observable, and this is a kind of error. And now you apply the corresponding least square, so you can define what you may require is that at the time point t, I mean like t equal to 1 to etc. So if you are talking about 1, you have 1 minus m past values, like the current error depend on the past m errors. So if you are starting at 1, you have 0, minus 1, minus 2, etc. 1 minus m. So that's going to be considered. So these are called initial values. Well, you can choose them as 0 if you of course, it gives you, if you have a very large number of observations, it's not going to affect, but if you have a very small number of observations, arbitrary choice may create problem in the estimation. So if you choose them as 0, so this is what I'm going to denote 1 epsilon t minus 1 square, etc., this vector. And therefore, we can write this equation in a format like this. So this is like a regression format, y equal to x beta plus epsilon, and this is my x. And if I write for all the t, so you can write now epsilon t square, epsilon 1 square, epsilon 2 square, etc., epsilon n square as y, and write this as each of the e's. You can write 1 epsilon t minus 1 square for put t equal to 1 to etc. up to n. So you get this entire set of vectors and call that matrix as x. So you have y equal to x theta plus u. Now this U is slightly different from the usual IID because the U consists of what? Those etas, because the model is eta. They are uncorrelated, they are not independent of each other. That's the main difference that what we have. But it doesn't matter, still least square theory works. Uh, so you can actually minimize this, assuming that this is invertible. You will be able to minimize this, and the minimizer is given by x prime x inverse x prime y. What is x? This matrix. Now, where do you get these things observed? Well, that's with my model. I either directly these are the errors, because when there is no mean effect. But if there is a mean effect, I will estimate the mean effect, subtract them, and whatever the residual I get, these are the observed part corresponding to that. What I mean by is that this epsilon t. See, these are not the direct observations that you have. Your observations are RT or YTs. But how do you get epsilon t? Because there is a mu t in between, which you estimate and subtract. And then you get epsilon t. Okay? So this is what the least square method. Now, how do you check the model? The model checking can be done very easily because we are assuming that epsilon t equal to sigma t zt, and this zt is a normal, and it is IID. So now that I have actually obtained a sigma t estimator, because once I have those alpha naught, alpha 1, alpha 2 estimators, I get the estimator of sigma t, and the epsilon t is the observable quantity. So this I get this ratio, which I call it as ZT. In fact, ZT cap, and then you can use them to verify the assumption. So what is the assumption that I made? ZTs are IID 0 sigma 0 1. So I'll verify that. Then whether independence can be verified by plotting the ACF, ACF, PACF of that. If you want to check the normality, you can get the QQ plot or other normality tests such as Jack-Beria test. You can also examine the skewness and kurtosis. So the PACF plot, the estimated residual show lie within the line provided the chosen volatility specification is taking care of the volatility. Because if your this is wrong, if this specification is wrong, then you won't get this to be the ZT that you have started with. You have made some assumption for ZT that will not be satisfied if you have not done a good job for this modeling. So that is the crux of the matter. What is that modeling? That modeling is nothing but we are trying to model it like this. So if this is not correct, what do you mean by it is not correct? I am still with this format, but I might not have taken all of whatever necessary M that is need to be taken along with this. So in such a case, these properties of ZT will not be true, and this is what basically you will have the problem in. So the residual analysis or diagnostic check will tell you that there is something wrong, so you need to rework on the model of sigma t. Okay. Now, one of the issues in this whole discussion is volatility forecasting. As I told you, it has independent interest also. Now, for example, how this is done. So it is like AR forecasting. It's very easy. For example, if you are at forecast origin t, a one-step ahead forecast is sigma t plus 1 square. And I denote, this is just a notation, just to indicate that we used to put cap. So sigma t square 1 is alpha naught plus epsilon alpha 1 epsilon t square, etc. This will go up to actually t minus m. So I have added 1 with that. So t plus 1 minus m. Okay. Now, for m equal to 1 to etc., this is completely known. 1, it is just epsilon t. Okay. So this fact. I mean, this is the first one step volatility forecast. That means standing at today, we are forecasting what is going to be the volatility tomorrow. How you could able to do that? That's not a big deal because you see the equation here. I'm just substituting it here. So you put t plus 1 here. So this will be t, etc. This is t plus 1 minus m, and that's what I have written. Okay. Now, for step 2, what we do is that I'll write those equations, but then this I need to forecast because this will become t plus 1. And t plus 1 I already done, so I'll replace this with this quantity because this is the variance at that point. So I'll, whatever estimate I got, I'll substitute it here. And then remaining things are from the past values, so these are known to me. And similarly, so in general, the L step forecast of volatility is alpha naught plus summation alpha I sigma t square L minus I. So this is for 1, 2, 3, etc. up to L minus I for I equal to 1 to M. So this is the L step forecast, and where this L minus I is T plus L minus I. If now what we do, as I told you for the convention, if you are crossing the first point and going backwards, we'll take that variance as 0 because we don't have observation. So that's where this will be 0 if L minus I is less than or equal to 0. So that's about the volatility forecasting. So in the next video, we will illustrate how the arch is working. Okay? Thank you.